Hey, right on. Are you ready for the next project? So the last project that we did was a subtraction project where we took clay away. This project that we're going to work on is to work on the skill of adding clay and having it stay together. There's a couple of processes that I need to teach you in order to do that. Working with clay is pretty simple. If you learn how to subtract clay, you learn how to add clay and have it stay together, then the only thing that you really have to struggle through is actually forming clay into the shapes that you want them to be in order to be able to make what you want to make. We're going to do a project that's called clay rattleheads. Clay rattleheads. And here's the GQ. How can you and I use sketching, sculpting techniques, scoring and slipping techniques, which I'm going to teach you, along with form, to create a 3D rattlehead that is well constructed and stays together. Scoring and slipping help us to attach pieces of clay to other pieces of clay, okay? Or peaches of clay, if you're making a peach rattlehead. Anyway, so here's the investigation phase. You gotta ask yourself this question. You gotta do a little bit of sketching in order to answer the question. What crazy features can you sculpt and attach to a hollow rattle ball to make a rattlehead? So, we're gonna start out by making a hollow rattle ball. So you're gonna start out with a ball of clay. I'm going to give you a ball of clay. You're going to want to make sure it's as smooth as possible. And you're going to cut that ball of clay in half. Pretty simple. You're just going to cut it in half using a clay cutter. Now you have two halves of a rattle ball, but you see it's solid on the inside. So you're going to need to hollow it out. I'm going to give you check out to you a set of clay tools that you're going to be able to use. Everybody's going to have their own loop tool. They're going to have their own sets of sculpting sticks. And the first thing you're going to need to do is hollow that out. So you're going to hollow out, using this loop tool, the center of that half of that rattle ball until it is about a half an inch thick all the way around. It can't be any thinner than that. About the thickness of your thumb. It's called the rule of thumb. Okay? About the thickness of your thumb. So you're going to hollow it out. And that's going to have to happen on both sides. Okay? While I'm doing that, I'm smoothing it out as I go, keeping the shape that I want it to be in. Got both sides hollowed out. They fit together. The next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to create the rattles. So I'm going to take some of the clay that was on the inside and I'm going to make some small rattles. All rattles are just round pieces of clay, little round pieces of clay, wrapped in paper towel. So I'm going to create 3 or 4 of those. I'm going to dip my paper towel in some water, make sure it's wet, and I'm going to wrap my rattles in that paper towel. And the reason why I got the paper towel wet is so it'll stick to the clay. Okay? So I'm going to wrap my rattles inside the paper towel. And I'm going to make 3 or 4 of them. They need to be round, and they need to be wrapped in paper towel. And the paper towel needs to be wet enough to make the rattle stick to it. Okay? So I want to make sure that it's wrapped up. I can wrap it first and then stick it in the water, make sure it's held together, and I'm going to set those off to the side. Next, I'm going to have to prepare the rattle ball itself to be scored. Scoring, S-K-O-R, score, is the process of scratching the edges of your clay that you're going to attach together. Scratching the edges of your clay that you're going to attach together in order to prepare it to be melded together. Remember I told you that clay is tiny little pieces of glass, little platelets, and you need to ooze those together or make them become one. Otherwise, when they dry, they go from being wet clay to bone dry. They separate, okay, because they're not one. And so you need to make sure that they are attached together. You do that by scoring and slipping, making the clay scored and slipped. So here's a serrated edge. Whoops, there it is. There's a serrated edge on the edge of my tool. I'm going to use that to score the clay. And all I'm doing is I am roughing up the clay, making it really, really rough. Trying to do the best that I can to make it rough. You can also use a fork for this. Forks actually work a little bit better, but this works, especially if the clay is pretty wet. Okay, I need to rough up both edges of the inside edge of my cup. Half of the ball. Okay? So I'm scoring that, getting it nice and scored, and then I have to get it wet. And so I'm going to stick my fingers in the bucket and I'm going to get it nice and wet. Now there should be a little bit of clay in your bucket. That's called slip. It's wet clay. I've dropped it in your bucket, and that is called slip, and it's kind of like glue. Okay? So I want to get it nice and oozy, really, really muddy, just on the edge, not on the whole thing, but just on the edge. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop my little rattles inside the cup. They're wrapped in paper towel so they won't stick together even when they dry, and that's why we wrap them in paper towel, is so that they don't stick together. And I want to make sure that the edges of these are still scored, because that's really important. If they're wet, that's okay, but they got to be scored. They got to be rough. Okay? This technique and the subtraction technique and then sculpting, which you're going to learn through the process, are the main skills that you need to make anything out of clay that is hand built, hand sculpted. Every artist who sculpts with clay learns how to score and slip, how to subtract, and how to add. So once I've scored and slipped it, I'm going to push it together. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to cause that seam to be solid so no air leaks through, and I'm going to be smoothing it. What's happening on the inside is that there's a bubble of air in there. But Mr. Royster, you said you didn't want any air bubbles. You're right, you don't. But right now it's okay. It's pushing from the inside out so you can't collapse it. I don't want it to collapse. What I'm doing is I'm smoothing it out. I want the seams to go away. I don't want to see the seams. In some of your cases, as you pinch it together, you're going to notice this little crack coming through. You may need to take a little bit of clay, a little wet clay, and just push it into that crack and smooth it over that. Take a little bit of water, smooth it out. You want your rattle ball to be as round as possible. Remember, it needs to be about a ½ inch thick because you're going to do some scoring on it as well. All right, so I have got a hollow rattle ball now, and if you shake it, you can feel the rattles on the inside shaking. Beautiful. Next, you're going to look at your sketches, and you're going to attach features. Okay, you're going to attach features to it. One of the features that you're going to attach, you may want to start with that, is some sort of a collar so it'll stand up. Okay? How do you attach features? Great question. You're going to start out with the clay that was on the inside of the rattle ball, and you're going to sculpt it into whatever features you might want to add. Let's say that I want to add a really funky sort of nose. So I'm going to take my clay, and I'm going to sculpt it into the shape of a nose that I might want to sculpt it into. So I'm sculpting away here. And I'm trying to shape just a basic nose, just to do something simple. I'm going to use my sculpting board that I'm working on to do that. And I'm trying to shape just this nose, okay? It doesn't look a lot like a nose, so I'm going to use some of my tools to kind of give it some features. And then, of course, it's going to have some nostrils, so I'm going to poke inside with those nostrils, okay? So I'm going to attach that to my rattle ball. How do I do it? You have to score it and slip it. So I'm going to score the back of it. Make it nice and rough. And then I'm going to score the place that I'm going to put it. I'm going to put it right there. Okay? So I'm going to score that spot nice and rough. Put some slip on it. Make sure it's nice and wet and oozy. I want it to be oozy, but I don't want to score all the way through the ball. I don't want to go into the center. But I want it to be so that it'll attach, because I want them to be one piece. Okay? And then I'm going to attach it. Sculpt it on. I got to remember that my rattle ball is hollow. So if I push too hard on it, I'm going to crush the rattle ball. I don't want to do that. A little wet, but I also want to make it look as if it's a part of that there's not a seam there. I want it to look like it belongs on the surface. Okay, I don't want to see the seam that connects the two. All right, unless that's part of what needs to happen. So I've got my nose attached to my rattle ball. All right, got my nose attached. There's always some fine tuning that you're going to want to do or have to do in order to make it continue to look the way you want it to look. I'm going to continue to create my features and sculpt and score them and slip them to my rattle ball until I have completely created my rattle head. The last feature you're going to attach to it is some sort of a collar that's going to allow it to stand up, to stay standing, okay? A collar could be as simple as just a coil of clay. Coiling clay means you're doing this, okay? It could be as simple as a coil of clay that is made into a loop and then attached to the bottom of it. You can make it into a collar, you can make it into a tie, or you can just leave it as a loop that is attached to it. But you'll see that if I leave it in a loop and then I score it and slip it on there, that it makes it possible for my rattle ball to sit up. Okay? Solid ball of clay, cut in half, hollow each half out, make 4 rattles, wrapped in paper towel, stick them on the inside, score and slip them together, sculpt your features, score and slip them on, always making sure that your rattle head is smooth. You're going to sculpt and attach a collar by scoring and slipping it to the bottom of it. And then, when all is said and done, you've got all of the shapes on there. You're going to take a look at it, and you're going to decide where you're going to poke some holes. You're going to need to poke some holes into it. Remember, because right now it's one giant bubble. All right? It's full of air, and that air has nowhere to escape, so you got to give it a place to escape. So you're going to find some strategic places, maybe in the ears, maybe through the nostril inside, maybe through the bottom of it. We won't see the bottom of it. Holes that would be about the size of a pencil, okay? Not so big that your rattle balls will come out, but large enough that the air can escape, okay? And you'll put a few, 4 maybe, in there, somewhere strategically into your rattle ball, okay? Then you're going to let it dry and we'll critique it. Our goal is to build something wacky, creative, and that holds together. I'm trying to test your ability to learn the basic skills of clay sculpture and have fun at the same time. Okay? It's not as easy as people think, but it's an enormous amount of fun. All right. Good for you.